This week in this class, we have learned about the European explorers that came to the Americas. And this Nearpod that we're going to look at today gives us a basic um, overview of what we've talked about and what you've seen in class this week, or what you've seen in the assignments this week. And so we'll talk a little bit about European explorers. We'll talk about the three countries that came from Europe to the Americas. We'll talk about Christopher Columbus, and then you'll take a short quiz at the end of this recording. So, 600 years ago, Europeans began to explore more than ever before. So they started going on voyages all over the world. That was around 1400. About 100 years after that, around 1500, they began to explore the Caribbean islands and North and South America. This map shows you basically the big four European countries and where they went. So Great Britain is up here, and you can see that Great Britain is the red. They explored mainly in North America, what is today Canada and the United States. France is right here, same as Great Britain. They explored mainly what is the modern day United States and Canada. And then you had Spain and Portugal. They spent a lot more time down here in the Caribbean islands and also in South America. So Spain and Portugal explored those areas. Why do you think this happened? The question here is, why do you think this happened? And so, do you believe that it was because there was interest in commerce growing, so interest in people getting more goods so they could trade them? Do you believe that it was because monarchies were increasing in power, so countries that were run by a king and a queen were becoming more common? Do you believe that it was because of the Protestant Reformation? So remember Martin Luther, you learned about last year. Martin Luther broke away from the Catholic Church and started his own church where he had different rules than those of the Catholic Church. Or do you believe it was all of the above? So take a minute and think about that. The answer as to why this happened is actually all of the above. All three of these factors played a part in why Europeans began to explore more than ever. Let's take a minute and talk about Christopher Columbus. When you were in elementary school, you probably learned about Christopher Columbus, and maybe you learned the phrase in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Well, there's more to the story than that. Columbus came up with an idea that he could try to reach the continent of Asia, specifically India, by sailing west instead of sailing east around the Horn of Africa and going that way. He thought maybe he could find a shorter way by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. And Columbus was born in Italy, and he was an Italian citizen. However, Italy did not support his idea of sailing west, and so he had to get the support and the resources from Spain. So he proposed his idea to the Spanish queen, and she approved him for 3 ships and the resources. So Columbus sets out on his voyage, and he thinks he's going to land in Asia, and unfortunately for him, he ends up landing in North America. Specifically, he lands on the island of Hispaniola, which is today the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And it's important to note that Columbus ends up never actually setting foot in what is the modern day United States of America. So interestingly, we have a holiday celebrating Columbus, but he was never here. Also, the reason why Native Americans came to be known as Indians is because Columbus thought he had landed in India, and so he named the Native Americans Indians. Before Columbus got here, there were other cultures here. And so this next question asks you, were the Vikings from Greenland and Iceland here before Columbus? Were Native Americans from Siberia here before Columbus? Or was Zhang He, a Chinese admiral, here before Columbus? Or is the answer all of the above? So I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. The answer to this question is, of course, all of the above again. Vikings from Greenland were definitely here before Columbus. Native Americans were definitely here because they lived here before Columbus. And historians believe that there's a very good chance that a Chinese admiral named Zhang He had been here somewhere around 1200 up to 200 or 300 years before Columbus arrived. And so the answer is all of the above for this question. So we need to ask ourselves a few questions about Columbus. Columbus definitely, a few facts about Columbus, and then we need to think about what kind of guy he was. Columbus definitely tried to do something new and bold, and he didn't find exactly what he was looking for. He thought he was going to find Asia, but his voyages inspired many more explorers in the future from all the different countries in Europe to try to find new places and to try to explore North and South America. Uh, the negative about Columbus is that under his authority, thousands of Native Americans were tortured and killed. Columbus was not very nice to the Native Americans. He enslaved them, oftentimes tortured them, and so Columbus, uh, in terms of how he treated the Native Americans, was not a good guy at all. In terms of doing something new and bold that no one else had tried before, Columbus did in fact kind of take a chance in terms of what he was doing. Let's look at two pictures of Columbus, and then we'll ask you another question. This picture is a painting of Columbus landing on Hispaniola with the Spanish flag, and all of the celebration. This painting makes it seem like he was a conquering hero. And the second picture is someone made up this wanted poster, like a wanted ad for Christopher Columbus, and it says, for grand theft of lands populated by indigenous peoples, for genocide, initiated systematic murder of 98% of original America. And so this is quite a different picture of Christopher Columbus. And so that leads us to this question: what kind of guy was Christopher Columbus? Think about it for a second. Based on what I've told you today, do you think Christopher Columbus was a good guy? Do you think Christopher Columbus was a bad guy? So think about that for just a second. Well, the answer is pretty complicated, in fact. Throughout the course of this year in this class, we're going to learn about a number of different people, from Christopher Columbus to George Washington to Thomas Jefferson to William Penn. And those people, when we learn about them, what we're going to look at is if they were kind of a good person or a bad person. And the reality is, most of the people we learn about this year, it's going to be a little bit of both. So Columbus was a good guy in the sense that he tried something no one else was willing to try, and he took a chance. But he was a really bad guy in the sense that he treated Native Americans very, very badly. So, after Columbus came to Hispaniola, many other countries from Europe began to explore North and South America. But in North America, where we're going to focus our attention this year, 3 countries were specifically the most involved in exploring. In the 100 years after Columbus's discovery, 3 European nations emerged as the dominant forces in North America, and you see them listed here: Spain, France, and Great Britain. On this map, you can see the areas in the New World as of 1700 in North America that each of these countries controlled. The British controlled mainly the East Coast, what is today the East Coast. The French controlled all of this green area here, what is a lot of Canada today, and then the middle part of the United States. And the Spanish controlled all of this orange area down here. Any of this pink area is area that was disputed by each of the countries as to who controlled it. So you can see by 1700, these 3 countries really dominated in terms of how much of North America they were controlling. Spain basically had 2 goals. They wanted to find gold, and they wanted to conquer Native Americans. The Spanish conquistadors had a lust for gold. They wanted to find gold at all costs. In reality, they ended up finding very little gold at all, and they did actually conquer a lot of the Native American tribes. France, on the other hand, they had a different approach. France was more interested in friending the Native Americans so that the Native Americans would trade with them. The French really wanted to trade for furs because fur hats in France were extremely popular. And so the French made friends with the Native Americans, and the Native Americans traded with them for hatchets and axes and guns. They traded beaver pelts and other furs to the French. So the French got beaver pelts and furs, the Native Americans got hatchets, axes, and guns. The British, on the other hand, were primarily interested in establishing permanent settlements and taking advantage of the land and its resources. The British wanted to establish permanent settlements because they were having an overcrowding population in Great Britain. Remember, Great Britain is an island, and so eventually you run out of room on an island. There's no more land, there's no more space for people, and they were running out of space for people. And so what did they do? Great Britain tried to get people to move to North America and settle permanent settlements. So people that were poor came to North America to form permanent settlements. People that were criminals came. People that were religiously persecuted because of their specific religion. Lots of people wanted to come to North America from Great Britain. The main issue, though, was that Great Britain was very overcrowded, and so lots of people wanted to come here and settle in permanent settlements. At this point, that's going to conclude this Nearpod. You do not have the ability to take the Nearpod quiz inside this presentation, but what you will do is once you stop this presentation, you can take the quiz through Schoology that is offered to you there. If you have any questions about it, you can email me, but I think it'll be pretty self-explanatory. Remember, keep this open, and you can flip through it as you go to help you with the quiz.